On September 17th, 2017, at 9:55 a.m., a seemingly innocent image was uploaded to a Korean forum site called Daum Cafe. At first glance, it looks like just another regular photo of someone's apartment. A washing machine, a kettle, a microwave, and other household items. Nothing unusual. But if you take a closer look at the slightly opened window in the background, you can notice something extremely creepy. Barely visible in the shadows is a face, with his eyes staring directly into the room wide open. And according to the woman who took and posted this photo, he had been standing there watching her through that window for over 10 minutes. The original post, which at first appeared on another Korean site called Pan8 before being deleted and re-uploaded, included a description from the woman who took the photo. She wrote, "I'm a woman who has been living alone for just under 3 years. Sorry for the long post, but recently a strange man was staring at me through my window, like in the photo. I took a picture at that moment and reported it to the police. At first, I felt scared and confused, but then I was overwhelmed with sadness. I couldn't bring myself to tell my parents, who work in another region and worry about their daughter. For now, I only told them that I'm moving because my current place is on the first floor and security seems vulnerable. But what's scary is that this man must have known I live alone and was looking through my window. I'm afraid he might roughly know my personal information. Is there any way to deal with this security threat? Just a temporary measure until I move." The police were really no help. They arrived over 20 minutes after I called, and even though I gave them the exact address, they couldn't even find my place. They bombarded me with ridiculous questions like whether I saw the suspect's face or how tall he was, to someone who was too scared to look properly out of the window. Then they just left. If anyone has experienced something similar, please share your story. I'm still so scared. I'm attaching the photo so you can see I'm not misunderstanding the situation. He stood there staring at me for over 10 minutes like that, and even tried to open the inner window. That's when I screamed. For reference, my window isn't facing a street where people walk by. It's between buildings. A window where sunlight doesn't come in well. I admit it was partly my fault for accidentally leaving the window unlocked, but I'm genuinely frightened for my safety right now. I'm posting this hoping for realistic advice on how to stay safe until I move." When seeing a picture like this, it's easy to assume that it's staged or otherwise faked just for engagement or attention. However, upon reading what the original post had said, and considering how big the issue of men stalking and harassing women is in East Asia, it becomes hard to doubt this photo's authenticity. The post seems like a genuine cry for help, and it's obvious as to why the author was so freaked out. This man went as far as navigating through a narrow dark space between buildings, a place with no foot traffic, no legitimate reason to be there, in order to stand in front of her window for over 10 minutes. He even tried to open the window after realizing it might be unlocked. He wasn't lost or confused. This was a predator executing a plan. What's worse is that this was possibly someone she knows or has met before, perhaps a colleague or an acquaintance, as he knew exactly which window was hers, and he knew she lived alone. And unfortunately, this woman wasn't the only one to experience something exactly like this. The comment section on the website was outpoured with similar stories and genuine fear and concern coming from others. One woman shared the nightmare she herself had to endure when living on the first floor, just like the OP, describing how a stalker on a motorcycle would come to her building at dawn and would just smoke cigarettes while lurking outside of her window, once even knocking on her door at 3 a.m. When she finally managed to get the security guard of the building involved, she was told to just keep her veranda closed. It was the middle of summer, and I cried because I thought I couldn't even open the door when I wanted. Another woman wrote, "No, seriously, if you live on the first floor, you're screwed. I also used to live on the first floor, and in about a year, I went to the police station 4 times in total. They took hidden camera photos, tried to open the window, and it was raining past midnight, and I could see their shadow standing outside the window without an umbrella. I really thought I was going crazy living there. Even though the house I moved into is safe, it felt like someone was watching me from somewhere. Anyway, you absolutely should not live on the first floor." And the police officers even came so much that I thought the case would get bigger, but it died down. When I asked what happened, they said that dozens of similar crimes come in a day and they can't catch them all. I agree with the writer. I also lived in another city, so I couldn't tell my parents right away. That's why I got in trouble. After reading through these horrific incidents, it becomes apparent that the stalkers aren't the only problem here. A common theme that can be noticed among these stories is how apathetic and incompetent the law enforcement or security services were when it came to cases like this. As one user pointed out, this was a systematic problem in the country. And yet, they only hire male police officers. Most victims are women, and male officers can't emphasize with them, and women can't trust male officers, but they don't hire female police. Dozens of similar crimes like this happen every single day, and it is apparent from the accounts of these and many more women online that the police have seemingly given up trying. In other words, the South Korean law enforcement has essentially admitted that this specific type of crime against women is so common, so pervasive, that they no longer even attempt to fully investigate cases involving it anymore. It's being normalized, accepted as just another statistic, with the only piece of advice given to these victims being,
"Don't forget to fully secure your windows or doors."
Almost as if shifting the blame onto them. However, nobody should feel this way. As the previous commenter pointed out, how is it fair that she cannot enjoy something as minuscule as an evening breeze just because she is a woman living on the ground floor? Why does she need to feel scared and hide in her own home? What has she done wrong? And this is the main issue. While these victims go out of their way to protect themselves by staying low or even changing their daily routines, the perpetrators can run free and usually are not met with any consequences for interfering or ruining someone's entire life in such a horrific way. And cases like these are abundant, with some victims ultimately ending up dead or otherwise hurt, even though they had been trying to seek help and reporting their stalkers for months or even years. This eerie photograph remains as a chilling piece of evidence, not just of one crime, but of a pattern of predatory behavior that the society has seemingly normalized through inaction. I could not find any more updates or details to this specific case, so it still remains unclear how the situation of the author turned out in the end. All that we can do is hope that she managed to safely move away and that the man never returned again. You're looking at a grainy, black and white image from a security camera. The footage shows the inside of what seems to be a garage. Concrete floor, dim lighting, and a car parked inside. The image quality is poor, and it is hard to make out clear details. But if you look closely at that car, there's something on top of it. Even though the image is blurry, you can make out that the figure is probably a woman. either crouching or kneeling down, with her hands behind her back. And according to the person who found and shared this image on Reddit, the woman is frozen still in this disturbing position. The image was screenshotted from a now deactivated website called Instacam, which was a directory of thousands of unsecured security cameras from around the world. On the website, anyone could watch live feeds from improperly protected cameras placed in people's homes, garages, driveways, and businesses without their knowledge. This exact camera was located in Bath, England, and a Redditor by the name Face Reality Bot stumbled upon it while browsing the website, after which they quickly shared the screenshot on r/creepy. Upon seeing an image like this, your mind immediately jumps to the worst possibilities. There's a woman alone in a closed garage, kneeling on top of a car with her hands positioned behind her back. The posture isn't natural. It looks like something you would see if someone was restrained or held against their will. The complete stillness only adds to the sense that something terrible could be happening. She is isolated in that enclosed space, cut off from anyone who might notice or help. And the most disturbing part is that this was being broadcast live. If something bad was happening to this woman, people around the world could have been watching it unfold in real time, completely unaware of whether they were witnessing an actual crime. But a single screenshot can't tell you everything. The only way to truly understand what was happening was to visit the website and watch the camera live. And some users did just that. What they reported back made the things even more unsettling. One person wrote that someone walked into the frame and then left without interacting with whatever was on top of the car, like they didn't even see it or chose to ignore it. Another user said that they witnessed some guy looking down at the camera, then there was static, and then he disappeared. Then some reported that the image distorted several times, and during one of those distortions, they swore they saw a face with large black eyes flicker across the screen for just a second. Multiple people saw something on that live feed that they couldn't explain and didn't want to see again. The concern grew serious enough that someone actually reported the incident to Crime Stoppers. For those who don't know, Crime Stoppers is an organization that allows people to anonymously report information about crimes to law enforcement. It operates in multiple countries, including the UK, where this camera was located. The person who reported it provided them with the location and whatever information they could gather from the camera feed. At least, someone felt compelled to take action to make sure that if this woman was in genuine danger, authorities would be made aware. But here's where the story ends without any real answers, because Instacams and all the live recordings on it were eventually taken down. It remains completely unclear what happened to that woman and if the mystery was ever solved. There is no way to verify what was real and what might have been a trick of poor image quality and overactive imaginations. And the original poster's account, Face Reality Bot, is now permanently banned. So even if there were any updates about the post, all of that is lost. We are left with nothing but a grainy screenshot and comments from people who claim they saw something more disturbing than the image posted by the OP. On October 17th, 2011, 3 teenagers took a seemingly innocent selfie that would actually become one of the most haunting images ever captured. At first glance, what you see in the picture is just 3 girls posing and smiling together in the middle of what appears to be some sort of field or a dirt road. Nothing really seems out of the ordinary at first, but if you take a closer look at the upper right corner of the frame, right behind them, you can notice a bright light. And when you realize what that light actually is, this innocent photograph suddenly transforms into something absolutely terrifying. The 3 girls in the picture were 15-year-old Essa Ricker, 15-year-old Kelsey Webster, and Kelsey's younger sister, 13-year-old Savannah Webster. Kelsey and Savannah had just moved to the small community of Covered Bridge from California 2 months earlier. That Saturday evening, they were out taking pictures on the railroad tracks just off US 6 in Spanish Fork Canyon. Just before this photo was taken, Savannah posted to Facebook,
"Standing right by a train. This is awesome."
You can feel the excitement in those words. They thought that they were just having fun, living in the moment. They knew that a train was coming. That's why they were there. They wanted to capture that perfect shot, standing close enough to feel the rush of the wind as it passed by. However, what they didn't realize was that another train was approaching from the opposite direction, right behind them. And the light in the corner of the photograph was the headlight of that second train. Inside the train, conductor John Anderson had a clear view of the tracks ahead, and seeing 3 girls standing directly in the path, completely unaware despite him sounding the horn, made his blood run cold. John would later recall those final moments. "We watched in horror as we got closer. We saw them for about 15 seconds until they disappeared from our sight and the train continued moving forward." In those 12 seconds, the crew tried desperately to get the girls' attention, but according to Utah County Sheriff Sergeant Spencer Cannon, all of the noise coming from the first train that they were so focused on likely prevented them from hearing the warnings coming from the second train that was right behind them. Or maybe they realized that it was there and it was just too late for them to get away. We just don't know. There was just a thunderous noise as they were standing that close to the train. The girls were caught between 2 trains. One train either hit them directly or blew them into the path of the other. Investigators generally believe that they might have been struck by both. When the train finally stopped and conductor John Anderson reached the scene, he found Essa and Kelsey already deceased. However, Savannah, the same girl who had posted so excitedly just minutes before, was still alive. She was critically injured and rushed to the Primary Children's Medical Center, where she underwent emergency surgery. For 3 days afterwards, Savannah and her family continued to fight for her life. However, the doctors eventually delivered devastating news. Savannah's brain injuries were too severe, and she wouldn't ever recover. On October 20th, Savannah ultimately passed away when her life support was withdrawn at the end of the day. All 3 girls were now gone. This photograph, one that was taken on a beautiful fall day by 3 girls simply having fun, remains as a devastating reminder of how quickly joy can turn to tragedy. This incident left a scar not only on these girls' families, but also on the train crew, and we can only hope that all of the affected individuals have by now managed to find peace after living through something so incredibly traumatic and heartbreaking.